and some of the guys who drive the forklifts and things that unload the trucks. I mean, they've been doing it as long as I've been there. They've been there, and they just excited about what they do. Hey, I've 18 years or 17 years, and they remember the numbers. How long they've been out there in the cold, rain, shine, sleet, and snow. Making sure this has continued.
Welcome to the Greatness Ignited podcast, where we have conversations about the greatness of others so that you can recognize the greatness in you. My name is Barry Overton, and I have been studying greatness for the last 7 years, and it is taking my career to new heights. And now me and a few of the successful people that I have had the honor of interviewing are coming together to ignite your greatness and light the fire within. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Greatness Ignited podcast, where we're having conversations about the greatness in others so that you can realize and recognize the greatness in you. Today, we have a treat. I got one person, but we're going to hear about two legacies and two levels of greatness that this gentleman is going to share. It's really amazing to me when you hear the story and understand how he has helped to continue the legacy of someone else and the impact that he is having on the community right now. This gentleman, moved to Denver in 1995. He's a pastor. He's been a theology. He had a theology major and 2 master's degrees, and has made a huge impact in the communities that he's lived in, and particularly over the last 20 some odd years right here in the Denver community by impacting so many people during the Thanksgiving holiday season by keeping a tradition alive that we're going to talk about, but also keeping the name alive of an amazing gentleman that we're going to also talk about. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, Reverend Ronald Wooding. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Good. I'm glad to be here with you.
Glad to have you. And I know this has been probably 6-7 months in the making. I know we've been trying to get this done. We weren't able to get it in season 1, but it's perfect timing for season 2 because this is a pretty active time of the year for you with the foundation that you're working with. And also, I know you said that you had been talking to the media today and preparing for Thanksgiving, and the number of families that you guys impact on a annual basis. 40,000 people are having Thanksgiving dinner because of what the work that you're doing.
Well, yeah, it's been, as I say, for me, it's been close to 18 years now that I've been involved with the Daddy Bruce Thanksgiving event. And that's been, as I call it, a ministry because, I touch the lives of so many people. And as I told you, when I moved here, I only knew one person in Denver. And that was lady that was in my mother's first and second grade class. And now thousands of people, I may not know them a name, but they know me. They know, you're the guy that does the Daddy Bruce Thanksgiving every year. We see you on television. We see you there, on the day that they give out the boxes and everything. So, yes, it's been a journey and a lot of opportunities to meet so many people and realize, that so many people we are able to help on that day. And of course, as we carry it throughout the year with all the other events, not just on Thanksgiving, but throughout the year with his birthday celebration, with the school now, Bruce Randolph School being named after him, and the fact that he has a street named after him, a man who only had a 3rd grade education. All this came about, as I say, because his grandmother was an ex-slave that gave him her recipe for barbecue sauce.
Wow.
As they call it, the secret recipe. So for years, that's what they would always talk about, Daddy Bruce's secret barbecue sauce. And he took that, came to Denver, and it just led to so many other things when he was able to open up the restaurant.
Yeah. And we're going to definitely talk about his journey, but we got the opportunity. This is a unique show that we get to talk about two journeys. So I really want to start going back to Tennessee, where you grew up, and your education and what life was like growing up for you. I know your parents played a significant role in your life growing up as well, and kind of leading you down the path that you went. But let's go back, early childhood for you. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up?
Well, I grew up as I tell people, in a very small town, Fayetteville, Tennessee, which is like 95 miles from Nashville and about 45 miles from Huntsville, Alabama. And city only had about 9,000 plus people. So
Wow.
as I tell people, I say we feed more people on Thanksgiving than my entire city town that I lived in. But it was good. When you're growing up in the South, there's definitely uh, a way of life that if you're born into it, you just accept it sometimes and not even see the difference. In our town, it just happened to be where blacks and whites, we just learn, I won't say to stay in our place, but we learned what we could do and what not to do, and
Yeah.
it worked out well. I mean, I love my schools. I love going to the black schools that were there at that time, and being able to be in that setting until my senior year when they merged the schools. But up until then, it was always, that camaraderie of being around other blacks. And of course, my mother being a teacher, that put me in in with a lot more students, because she would always, the students who were having a hard time, she would bring them home after school and
Mhm.
help tutor them. And so it wasn't a paid position, but it's just the teachers, at that time, that's what they did to really help students out. And of course,
Mm.
my father sold class rings, high school class rings,
Yeah.
and the state of Alabama. So I got a chance to travel with him, during that time. And of course, I was during the civil rights before uh, Jim Crow and everything was still in place, and we couldn't stop at certain places, couldn't do anything other than just keep driving. So
Yeah.
my mother would always make him a big thermostat of coffee, and
Mm.
I say I think that's how I got hooked on coffee. Being around him, so I'm cutting it out now, but it was for years. I had to have a pot of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
had it was a good life. And then, of course, after high school, I went on to Tennessee State University.
Mhm.
And of course, at that time, um, it was in the 60s. So there were a lot of things still going on while I was in my first, first year. That's when Dr. King was assassinated. And of
Mm.
course, that really affected me because I had been studying a lot about him and knew a lot about the things that he was involved in. And
Mhm.
of course, I was contemplating pledging a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and
Mhm.
just he was a member of that fraternity, and
Yeah.
so that led me. He was assassinated in April, and I became an Alpha in November of that year, and have been 50 plus years now,
Mhm.
being participating that way. But it was a good life. I have no
Mhm.
complaints. I left Tennessee to go to Detroit, where I worked while I was in school, and then after school I moved there, and later worked with the one of the major radio stations at that time, WJZZ. It
Mm.
was the largest jazz station in the country, black-owned station, and that was really a great experience because I was meeting all the different uh, uh, stars that came through. Nancy Wilson and all the came through the station, and of course my job was make sure they were happy while they were at the station and had a good time and left out in a good mood so they'd come back again. So
Yeah.
we did a lot with broadcasting. Then I worked with Interurban Broadcasting, which was again a black-owned station that owned about 7 radio stations in between New Orleans and St. Louis and Savannah and various cities. So I did a lot of traveling from station to station, just doing promotion work, mostly PR kinds of things during that time. But again, having the opportunity to meet so many people that were in entertainment during those years, so it was an experience there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you actually spent what, about 20 years in the insurance industry as well?
Right when I came out of Tennessee State, I like I said, I moved to Detroit right out of school, and after I got my master's there, and
Mhm.
I I was hired by an insurance company there in Detroit. But when I got married, my ex-wife now didn't particularly like Detroit, so decided to move back to Nashville, and I opened up insurance agency there, insurance marketing agency, and
Uh-huh.
we ran that. My family, my brother, and my dad, and my mom. So that
Mhm.
was about a 20 plus year business that it really, I really enjoyed it. Again, it was a people business. You met a lot of people. Um, you were in, I believe, real estate.
Yeah.
So real estate people were good for me because when they sold a house, they had to have it insured. And
Mhm.
if you were in with the right real estate people, you were right there. For before they could even close, they had to talk with you. So
Yeah.
it was good, and because I had gone to Tennessee State, and my office was right down the street uh, from the school on Jefferson
Mhm.
Street, and that was, of course, the main street that ran through campus at that time.
Ah, all right. And so after that, there was a period where, again, I'm sure you were brought up and raised in the church, but
Mhm.
there definitely came a time in your life where there was a calling, and you decided to pursue a theology degree as well.
Right. Well, I tell people I definitely was brought up in the church. My grandfather's name is on the cornerstone of the church, is one of the founders of the church at that
Uh,
time. And I grew up there. And then, of course, my mother uh, uh, was a member of that church her entire life.
mm,
And this was, and then, of course, when I moved here, it was, how I don't know, a lot of pastors will tell you when they're called, they're like, I know you're not talking to me. You must be calling someone else. I must have picked up at the wrong time. And you keep putting it off and put it off and say, well, as soon as I do this, as soon as my kids, graduated from, high school, they're still in school at that time. And kept, always having an excuse. And then one day, like um, the Protestant who ended up in the pig pen, and
uh,
said, says, surely there's got to be something better for me in life.
uh,
And that's when he came home to his father. And that's when
yeah.
I decided to answer my calling that they'd been sending me letters for many years from Iliff School of Theology.
Hmm.
And I just, look at it and put it in trash. Say, well, not quite ready yet, not quite ready. And then
Yeah.
something hit me at one point, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should fill this out and send it in. And I
Yeah.
did, and I was accepted. And of course, I'd never been to Denver in my life,
Yeah.
and the only thing I knew about Denver, it snowed on Monday Night Football. So that's what I was looking at a lot of, and of course moved here, bought a 4-wheel drive, thinking you couldn't get around unless you had 4 wheels and
Yeah.
everything. But it was an experience. Like I say, I came here. I got a chance to study in Israel during that time, and I graduated in my 3 years with my thoughts of going back south. But I've been
Hmm.
here 25 years now. I haven't quite got away yet. So
Yeah.
I think that God had a reason for me coming, and my purpose has been to serve people. As you say, I I uh, just believe that when you look at scripture and it talks about how everyone fits into ministry,
Hmm.
and you serve in different capacities. Some are, uh, called to be this, some are called to be that, some are leaders, some are this. Well, I've always felt, I'm a servant leader,
Yeah.
and my job is to go out and get people to do things they didn't necessarily want to do, but
Yeah.
it always comes together. My connecting with you uh, was is to say we were trying to do something, I think, for Martin Luther King,
Uh-huh.
and and the young lady introduced us
Yep.
to, and you did a piece for us. I said, wow, I had never met this guy, and he did such a great piece. So I said, I need to meet him. So that's how we came together. But God has always done that, and it always leads to something else
Hmm.
other than what you might start out doing. So that's been my calling, and I've been able to introduce so many people, here in South Africa and wherever I've worked, that way, and it just has been a experience for me. Now, for some other people, that might be boring. It might be something, man, I couldn't do that, man. You just speak. My son tells me all the time, you speak to everybody. I said, well, it's just, it doesn't hurt to speak,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
never know. I mean, I don't do it for a reason that they must be somebody. I just speak
Uh-huh.
to everyone. If I'm on the elevator, I'll nod to speak to people.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, you see them somewhere else, and they say, "Well, haven't I met you before?" I said, "Yeah, the elevator." So it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, it's something other people can't do. I mean, they would shy away from that in a hurry. Man, I don't like people. I don't I don't do well with people. And I say, well,
Hmm.
I enjoy it. I mean, I just something I enjoy doing, and I've been blessed. To have been involved with so many churches in Denver, not from a pastoral standpoint, but just from the service standpoint of helping them with one of their projects. And I
Hmm.
have a couple of awards. One that says for faithfulness that
Hmm.
Dr. Seal Morgan Smith's organization had given me a few years ago. Um, and I remember reading on my grandfather's obituary, they said that he was a faithful person. And I said,
Hmm.
well, I guess I'm living up to my grandfather's status at that point because I enjoy working with people all over.
Yeah. Yeah. And it often takes me to scripture when I think about, we all come up with the things in life that we expect to do and the plan that we have. And but Jeremiah 29:11 is probably one of the scriptures that really sticks the most to me, and understanding that God has a plan, and it is, it's a plan not to harm us, but to prosper us from that plan. And a lot of times we don't understand why things are leading us down this path. But then all of a sudden, when you can look back on it, you realize that, oh, moving to Denver and pursuing my theology degree was for me to get to Denver and learn about this other amazing man that we're going to talk about
Mm,
here in just a second. And so it's, Steve Jobs said that you can't connect the dots in life looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And I would assume that when you look backwards at the dots of your life and how they've all connected, you can truly see that this was God's plan to put you here in this place at this time, because he knew he had to put someone there that would answer the call. And not just the call to give glory to God in regards and your theology degree, but also the call that came along with taking the life of another man and making sure that his legacy carried on. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and just kind of talk about how once you got here. I know you were working for a company that was actually uh, kind of what got you connected to Daddy Bruce and who he was.
mm. Well, yes. Like I said, when I graduated from Iliff School of Theology,
Mhm.
I was um, invited by my church, former church in Nashville, to go to South Africa because they had uh, made contact with an orphanage there that they
Mm,
were very impressed with. This lady had 90 something kids that they took care of. She and
mm,
five other ladies. But the people wanted them to move off the land. And so the pastor made a commitment to the owners. If they gave him a year, he would come back and they would purchase that land for the orphanage. And so anyway, I had gone on that trip, and it just so impressed me because so many of these kids, of course, at that time I was dealing with HIV and AIDS, and something I had never dealt with and had never talked about. And I came back to Denver and became a spokesperson for that particular orphanage. And then the church, Epworth uh, United Methodist Church, asked me would I consider coming and working with them because that program in itself was something that was needed
mm,
to be able to share not just here in Denver but around the country and whatever. So that's how I became involved with Epworth. But one day I was driving up when I first started on a Saturday morning to a Hispanic church that was meeting there because I always tell people I did not know any Hispanics at all until I moved to Denver.
mm,
And I said, now I go to Nashville, and of course, from the time you get off the plane, it's a cosmopolitan city now. But
mm,
at the time when I wanted to visit their service, and when I was driving up, there was tents all in the street. And I'm like,
mm,
well, why are the tents in the middle of the street on a Saturday morning?
mm,
6:30, 7 o'clock. So when I got to the church, I had to go. I asked how. I mean, what was going on? They said, "Oh, it's the Daddy Bruce Thanksgiving event." I said, "Oh, I did see something on television about that." But I was never here for those 3 years I was in school because my
mm.
friends were coming from around the country and we go skiing during
Ah,
the Thanksgiving holiday. So I wasn't even in Denver. But anyway, so after church, I went down and saw all these people and everything. So I started asking questions about it and met some of the people that were involved in putting it together. And I said, boy, this is a mission right here on the street.
mhm,
So, but anyway, ironic part about that, um, I was living out way off County Line Road at that time, and I was
mm,
telling the realtor I said I'm from a small town, and I'm just not used to all this driving, trying to get in, get out, and
yeah.
leave by a certain time and all that. I said, can you find me something in the city, closer to the church? She said, we have a house right down the street that we remodel, and it's in fact brand new on the inside. And so we went down to look at it, and I said, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. I said, I'll take it. And not knowing that that was part of the Bruce Randolph restaurant. They had the
Mm,
restaurant on one side, and they used the house as for over when they had more people that could go in the restaurant that was part of it.
mm.
So I said, I think the spirit got on me living in that house because I started meeting the neighbors and they started telling me all these rich stories
Mm.
about this man, Bruce Randolph, and how, all the people that used to come to the restaurant, like Oprah Winfrey,
Wow.
used to come out when she and Stedman, I think Stedman was living here during that time, and
Mm,
she would come out to visit him, and he would bring her to the restaurant, and then go Sammy Davis Jr. and just named all the people that had been through there, and
mm,
then of course with the Broncos and his connection with the Broncos, that from everybody from Pat Bowlen to cheerleaders and everyone else that came out to help on Thanksgiving. I was like, wow. And then he traveled with the Broncos to all the games and things out of town, cooked
mhm.
for him and everything. So of course, when he passed, uh, he had spent all his money giving it back,
Yeah.
based on Thanksgiving and everything. So Pat Bowlen said, any any debts that Daddy Bruce has, send them to me. And he
Mm.
took care of everything, funeral expenses and everything else. And they
Wow.
said they had cars from where the restaurant was located there on Bruce Randolph. At that time, it was 34th, all the
Mhm,
way to where um, um, church Colorado Boulevard, the Baptist Church. Uh,
The New Hope
New
or
Hope, yeah.
yeah.
And cars were from all the way, and they had like 1,500 people that
Mm,
attended his funeral.
wow.
And, even a lot of them were outside and whatever, but it was such a huge event for a man who, like I said again, who came here, only had a third grade education, but to have a street named after him. Then
Hmm.
later they named the school after him. And, and today, what would they say? We 20 plus years since his death, and we
Yeah.
still talking about him like he's alive.
Yeah.
When I talk to people and they say, "You talk like you just talked with him." Well, I said, "Well, I was talking to his son up until this year, when
Yeah.
he passed. So, yes, the family, I've, been close with them over the years. But it was just the fact that not just me, but so many people, have those stories. I mean,
Hmm.
they knew him personally and they can tell you, stories about him, about when they would go in a restaurant when they were young, didn't have
Hmm.
any money, and how he would allow them to get something to eat, and they go
Yeah.
out back and cut some wood, for the barbecue pit, or help clean up afterwards or whatever. But he never turned away anyone.
Yeah.
And they said when you drive up to the restaurant, you'd have Mercedes, you have Rolls Royces, you'd have, you know, uh, people from all walks of life coming to there to eat
Yeah.
at Daddy Bruce's.
Yeah. And one of the other big parts of his legacy was the Thanksgiving meals that he provided as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that started in
In 1963,
okay.
he did his first cook where he only did 200 meals a year. He had
Hmm.
taken a grill over to City Park
Hmm.
and cooked for like about 200 people. But then
Hmm.
the next year, when he had the restaurant open, that's when he started actually feeding people, out of the restaurant. And of course, with so many volunteers and whatever, helping, they were, I mean, that was amazing. Just the fact they could, cook that much food
Yeah.
and have it stored in the freezers and everything and unthawed and whatever. And he had such a reputation in this city. If he was running out of something, he could call other restaurant owners and
Hmm.
say, we're running out of desserts or we're running out. No problem. We'll send you a truckload over. And that was kind of relationship he had with everyone. It wasn't like they were competing with him or whatever. They just knew this was his day and this is what he did, and they were willing to help out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's amazing in itself. And on the top of that, he started that right at about 59. Was he what?
Well, he was
Um,
63 when he actually
63.
did the first meals, and
Okay.
64 when he opened the restaurant,
Okay.
and he continued that. And like I say, yeah, when most people, it's time to sit down. Hey,
Yeah.
I've done enough. My son has given me a place to live. I don't have to, you know, to worry about a place to live, all that. So, but he said no. He said I want to do more. So his son,
Mhm.
who had good credit, Bruce Jr., took him to the bank. They loaned him $1,000. And Bruce Jr. said when it came time to pay it back, they wouldn't even take the money.
Oh
I
wow.
told I told him, I said, I need you to take me to the bank so I could get one of those loans. But
Yeah.
he just, again, he was able to take that $1,000 and you can see what he did with it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
built that, had the grill built, and it just kept growing and growing. And, and it wasn't easy necessarily in the first years because Broncos weren't there, none of these sponsors. He was doing
Mhm.
it out of what he made out of the restaurant. So
Yeah.
I tell young people, he was an entrepreneur first,
Hmm.
because he had to make the money in order to, put back into, his passion and
Yeah.
everything. So sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we want to do the passion before we have a way to finance it. But he
Yeah.
had the restaurant, and then he was able to, build from there. And that was the catalyst for all the connections and everything he had, because he had, that place there on the corner to be able
Mhm.
to draw people in.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this podcast, it's called the Greatness Ignited podcast, and it's
Mm.
really so that we can have these stories. Usually, the people that I'm interviewing are telling their story in regards to things that they've been able to achieve in life, or experiences that they've had. But this is one where we're getting it of a story of someone else that passed 27 years ago. But I always say that when you live your life in greatness, it leaves a legacy that outlives you. And this is a perfect example of that, because here it is, 27 years later, we are still talking about him. He is still relevant. The Thanksgiving, meals are still being given out every year in his name through the works that you're doing. And this is another level to the greatness of what you are doing now. Because what amazed me we started talking about putting this together is the fact that I'm sitting here thinking that you and Daddy Bruce must have been the best of friends, and you wanted to keep your friend's legacy going. And then I come to find that you actually never met him. Um, you moved here in 95. He passed away in 94. So you never had the opportunity to meet him, but you have spent the last 18 years that you talked about of making sure that you're keeping this legacy alive.
Right, and it's as I say, it's a ministry to me. A lot
Mhm.
of times people think you have to have a church, you have to be the head pastor to make things work. I said, but I work with so many head pastors, so many churches that we give food out to some of their members, on Thanksgiving. So in doing that, I consider that a way of being part of community, but yet if I came to a place where you worship, I'd feel at home. I
Mhm.
mean, I wouldn't have to say, well, I can't go there because that's someone else's church. No, we are all one church.
Yeah.
If we look at it that way and just say, okay, how can we make things better working together?
Mhm.
And that's been a big help for us over the years because so many people, black, white, Hispanic, that volunteer, on Thanksgiving, and they come because they have that same feeling, and they've been doing it for years. And some of the guys who drive the forklifts and things that unload the trucks, I mean, they've been doing it as long as I've been there. They've been there, and they just excited about what they do. Hey, I've 18 years or 17 years, and they remember the numbers. How long they've been out there in the cold, rain, shine, sleet, and snow. Making sure this has continued.
There's greatness within you. We've all heard those words before, but do we truly believe it? I can tell you, it took me about 3 years of studying greatness before I realized there truly is greatness inside of me. And I wrote a book called Ignite Your Greatness that proves the theory that we all have greatness within us. And I take it a step further. Once I prove it to you, I tell you exactly how to ignite the fire within you and take your life to new heights. Get your copy of Ignite Your Greatness at igniteyourgreatness.com. Also available on Amazon. It's been amazing to see that it continues. And I think someone from the outside looking in would think that it's just been a smooth process, but there have been bumps in the road, and there's been while there's the hills, there's also the valleys that you've
Mm,
gone through. Even before you got involved with it, it was in jeopardy at one point of almost not happening, right?
right, and that was again my first year. Um, well, that may have happened years, along the way because I wasn't here. Where
Mm-hmm.
Daddy Bruce, they would come on. They would say it may not happen this year because Daddy Bruce doesn't have enough, you know, funds to carry this out alone, and people would just come and make donations,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how he was able to keep it going. So that this particular year, the church that had been carrying it on for years, Salem Baptist, which is right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pastor was leaving, and they just decided, hey, we've done this for 12 years, and we think it's time for us to step back. And so Tamara Banks, who was a newscaster during that time, um, they were she had talked to her network into letting her do the story on that. So she was out there, and just happened when I was coming home, they had the light shining on my house where I was living in the restaurant. And I'm like, why are the lights on my house? What's going on? So when I asked, they said, well, they're getting ready to make the announcement that it will not happen this year because it's going to be canceled. And
Mm,
so that's when I called at that time. Well, Pastor Harris, he had passed at Epworth, United Methodist Church, and I said, well, we were talking about getting involved, and they're talking about not having this, carrying this on, after last year. And so, at any rate, he came down, and she just happened to know the pastor's number that was leaving, and she gave it to me, and I called him, and that's when we had the conversation. So a meeting was set up for the next day. So when she made the announcement, she said it may not happen this year, and
mm,
that's the beginning of where it is now, because that's how we got involved, and it
mhm.
just has continued. um, Epworth United Methodist, because they do the Thanksgiving event. And as I tell people, I said, they do that well. I said, as far as staying up all night, uh, unloading trucks, God did give me that gift. I said, now I'll talk to the media. I'll raise funds. I said, but they know, don't put me on a tow motor. So anyway, it's just a standard joke. Now you stay down at the end and talk to the media and let them know what's happening, and don't
Yeah.
come up here where the work is being done. And it's been a good experience. And then, of course, I started the Daddy Bruce Legacy Foundation to
Mhm.
carry on all the things that Daddy Bruce did in his life. So it's not just talking about Thanksgiving; it's talking about his childhood. It's talking about his mother. It's talking about, I mean, his grandmother, and his entire family, and how
Mhm.
they helped shape his life. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, important, because, like I said, when we do the event at Bruce Randolph School now, so when the students come to school every year, they get a chance now to view my documentary,
Mhm.
to learn more about why is the school named Bruce Randolph.
Ah.
And then, of course, about 3 years ago, they allowed me to work with them on redoing the cafeteria. So they
Mhm.
renamed it the Daddy Bruce Barbecue Cafetorium. So
Okay.
now when you go there, every wall has a picture of Daddy Bruce with a caption under it that we
Ah.
put together. So when people come there for meetings or whatever, they can walk around and say, "Oh, I didn't know that." They can read this about this man, and
Yeah.
it's like he's right there. I mean, because
Yeah.
it talks about the kids that they used to come by the restaurant, and he would throw candy over the balcony. Uh, when they come in from school in the evenings, and they holler, "Daddy Bruce, Daddy Bruce," and so
Yeah.
they nicknamed him the Pied Piper of Denver, because
Ah.
so many people followed him. Not just, like I say,
Mhm.
it wasn't for black people, it wasn't for whites, it was for everybody, Hispanics, anybody walked in there, you were treated
Yeah.
like a person.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the way we all should live our lives.
Yeah, and that, again, that's an amazing impact that he was able to have, and it's beautiful that, as you said, I mean, there's photos of him and placards that tell the story that young children that are going to the school and their
Mm.
parents can read that, and year after year that continues to the next group of kids that come through are getting those same lessons, and that's truly how you allow a legacy to continue to live on. But it takes, again, folks like you and the people that are working with you in order to be able to make that happen. And that goes back to what you said in regards to your purpose is service to others. This is truly the epitome of that statement, service to others. Because in most cases, when we think about service to others, it's usually service to the living, which you are doing, and being a part of with the Thanksgiving event. But this is also a service that you're doing for someone that has passed. So that says so much about you as the man that you are. And I just want to say thank you, because this is history that you're giving us by providing that.
Right. And just two other little things there to mention, like when Ronald Reagan was president, he recognized Daddy Bruce.
Mm.
And then when President Obama did the State of the Union in 2011, he mentioned Bruce Randolph to
Wow.
school and how well they were doing,
Mhm.
during that particular time. And I think, how does he know about Bruce Randolph's school in Denver?
Yeah.
Of course, we had politicians that were probably, helped him, gave him that information. But the fact that here he was speaking to the entire world
Mhm.
on in 2011 and talking about Bruce Randolph.
Yeah.
So it was meant to be. I mean, it's not like say. Hopefully, I'm talking to some younger people now about picking up the mantle, and carrying it on. I said because one of the things we do at the school now, we have an awards program where during the time it's 6th through 12th grade. So we have an awards program. It's called Be Bruce.
Mhm.
So they can win. I can receive a letter each year, all of them. B is for brilliance, R is respect, U is unity, C is character, and E is for excellence, and effort. I'm sorry, and they can receive one or all those letters for going out in the community, doing something similar to what Daddy Bruce has done.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's it continues and continues, and now we have uh, they received a grant this year for like $500,000 to start teaching the kids how to raise food, like
Hmm.
inside the I forget what you call those things where you raise food inside. But anyway, so now they can go out in their communities and teach people how to start gardens, how because many places don't have supermarkets, anything close. But now
Yeah.
they'll be able to raise right in their backyard or in a community garden. So
Yeah.
much is happening that it just keeps growing and growing,
Yeah.
and that's what I believe. You know, 20 years from now, somebody will be we still telling the story.
Yeah. And you've done a great job with telling us the story here, but I mean you've worked tirelessly even to produce a documentary that has been it's been shown on PBS and getting ready to be shown again. But this is again, once again, all part of your efforts to be able to keep the legacy going. But
Right.
tell us about the documentary.
Well, the documentary is on the life of Bruce Randolph, starting, of course, back in 1900, telling his fact that his grandmother was an ex-slave and, gave him her secret recipe and her spiritual guidance. And so that was the beginning of it. And of course, he was born in Arkansas, right out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pretoria is the city that we talk about. But anyway, in doing that, working, I said, this is something that needs to be carried on. And of course, I decided to work with making the documentary. And of course, over the years, gathering information, from some of the TV stations and various ones who had covered it, in the earlier years, and being able to utilize some of their film plus interviews with people who actually knew him and people who received food boxes over the years, and on up to four mayors, from Mayor Pena, Mayor Webb, Mayor Hickenlooper, Mayor Hancock. They all have been involved with Daddy Bruce, during
Mhm.
their tenure, and
Yeah.
even going back to. I was reading an article the other day that I just found on Dick Lamb when he was governor.
Wow.
Being shaking hands in 1985 with Daddy Bruce. I'm like, man, there's so much history that I don't even know. That
Yeah.
I keep finding pieces and saying, okay, we got to have these archived. So it's not just here in my home, but we'll be in some place. And
Yeah.
of course, we were lucky this year, fortunate this year. We did a piece with History Colorado, where our exhibit with Daddy Bruce, Mayor Pena, and I helped put that together.
Mm.
And the award was part of a national award, won first place. And I was going to Arkansas because I'd never been there where Daddy Bruce was born and everything and grew up. But due to health reasons, I didn't get a chance to go. But just the fact that here they're going back to where his home state, still talking about Daddy Bruce,
Yeah.
and so it's much larger than me. So when some of these younger filmmakers, this is the week for the Denver Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already talking to them about next year having one of the films shown at Bruce Randolph School.
Mm.
Doing that week, and and then getting some of these younger film producers to come and help out. I'm, as they say, put in all I can, and it's time for me to sit back and say, look, you all take from here. Here's all kind of footage. Here's all kind of information. Now take
Mm-hmm.
it to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's going to air again this year on PBS. You have 2 dates that it's going to
Right,
air, correct?
and that's Rocky Mountain PBS.
Okay.
Sometimes people get mixed up, but it's Rocky Mountain PBS, which is
Rocky Mountain
local.
PBS.
Yeah, that shows all over Wyoming, all around. But last year we had 188,000 people that viewed it, so that's why they bring it back again. We got good coverage, but yeah, it'd be on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and again on Thanksgiving Day. I think they said I should have in front of me, but I know the times. But if you go to Rocky Mountain PBS, they will have it listed, the times that they will show it, and then it's streamed, so you can see it all over the country, all over the world. I guess if it's streamed,
Yeah.
I've got to learn how to do that so I can even reach more people,
Yeah.
through the streaming networks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that, I mean, you are such an inspiration just in regards to the work that you are doing and living in that purpose. And I mean, we won't get into the health issues, but
Mhm.
but you've been having some challenges health wise, but even through that, as you just told me, you were on with the media earlier today. You're on this podcast today because this is, when you're working in your purpose, it becomes, a focal point of the things that you're trying to get done in life. And I can see that there's still so many things that you want to be able to achieve with this. You mentioned being able to turn this into a movie at some point.
Right, because like I say again, every movie you watch started at some point with a story.
Yeah.
And unless it's I mean, when you start talking about one that's built on true facts,
Mhm.
so it started with a story. So in telling that story, quite naturally it won't be the same people, but it'll be someone playing that character,
Yeah.
and or a restaurant that was so similar to what Bruce Randolph was doing, but it
Mhm.
might be named something else. But the idea is that story can be sit down in any city.
Mhm.
I mean, if you go to New Orleans, you get plenty of stories about people.
Yeah.
They had restaurants and what they've done over 100 years, families and things like that. So go to Detroit. Wherever you go, there's somebody reaching out. Atlanta, wherever you are, there's some family or people who've come together to carry on something. So it's just a matter of Daddy Bruce just happened to have um, a window of opportunity because at that time you only had 3 TV stations. So what you were seeing here in Denver, you saw in Chicago, on Thanksgiving, you saw,
Yeah.
so now, with everybody watching so many different things, you may not see that. But during that time, people would tell me, yeah, I was living in Chicago and every Thanksgiving he would be on television, so, but like I say, times change. So now we have to change. I have to learn about how to stream, so I can tell people in Tennessee and Alabama, Georgia, wherever, that,
Mhm.
hey, make sure you watch this on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great Thanksgiving documentary to be able to watch. I think
Mhm.
in many instances we have, Easter, we have certain shows that come on. Thanksgiving, we have certain shows that come on. And for this to become a staple of Thanksgiving right now, just in the Rocky Mountain region, but as you said, with the hopes of being able to take this where it's national, where it's global, to a certain point because it's an amazing feel-good story. You are an amazing feel-good story just in regards to what you're doing as well. And I want to thank you so very much for being a part of the Greatness Ignited podcast and just truly being an example of what greatness in the flesh looks like.
Well, I thank you, and I thank you for your support. Mentioned health reasons, and I always say God is always involved in everything because in 2019, when I was going into the hospital for my illness, um, one of the stations, made an announcement that one of the major fundraisers will not be uh, available this year because he's going into the hospital for his treatments, and so um, these people saw it and they came to the hospital and brought checks,
Uh-huh.
and everything. I was there with my pajamas on with them, donating. The police department came and a couple of others that I knew. But anyway, I just said, God can use you wherever you are.
Yeah.
And that led into when I got out of the hospital, connecting with these people and saying, thank you. And they said, we want to be, more involved this year. So last year, doing one of our fundraisers, we raised $50,000.
Wow.
Doing a virtual. This year we raised $70,000
Oh.
by having it a live one at Wilshire Golf Course, and it just shows how things can continue to grow. So 50,
Mhm.
70 next year, 100. But it all goes back into helping to feed people on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Reverend Wooding. And ladies and gentlemen, again, you can see the documentary on Daddy Bruce
Did we
on
tell the name? Just
no.
keep a light in your window. I'm sorry, I got so carried away. I forgot to
All
tell you
right.
the name of the documentary. Keep a
All
light
right.
in your window.
Keep a light in your window on November 21st, which is Sunday before Thanksgiving, and then actually Thanksgiving Day. Make sure to go to Rocky Mountain PBS. If you're not going to be home, set your recorders to record it, but you want to see this documentary about this amazing man. And that is truly what greatness is about, just living in your purpose and being able to inspire and impact others. And ladies and gentlemen, as I always say at the end of the show, just always remember, yes, the struggle is real, but so is your greatness.
Ignite your greatness, take a leap of faith and you'll make it. Wanna live life to the fullest, you gotta be hardworking and patient. You got the fire within you, you got a dream that you should be chasing. Pushing through to the finish line and you got no time to be wasting, yeah. Ignite your greatness, take a leap of faith and you'll make it.